Hi, I'm Morten Solvik, Vice President of Mahler Foundation and host and producer of the Mahler Hour, where we bring you the personalities, places, and projects happening right now in the Mahler community around the world. Last month, we explored the Mahler competition of the Bamberg Symphony Orchestra. I spoke with this year's winner, the Italian conductor Giuseppe Mengele, as well as Marina Mahler, the co-founder of the competition, Martin Campbell-White, jury member and Mahler Foundation chairman, and with Kevin Fitzgerald, winner of a special prize at the competition sponsored by Mahler Foundation for conducting a contemporary composition. Remember, you can see this show and all past Mahler Hours on our website and on our YouTube channel. For this episode of the Mahler Hour, we are taking you live to the Beijing Music Festival. I will be speaking with the organizers there, as well as key individuals behind the Mahler Foundation Festival Orchestra, making its debut appearance at this event. Also, at the very end of the show, we will be bringing you an announcement from the Mahler Festival 2025 in Amsterdam by the director of the Concertgebouw Hall, Simon Reinink. Before we begin, let me remind everyone attending live to post any questions you might have to the comment section. We will get to these at the end of our show. Don't forget to include your name and the country you are writing from. Also, the Mahler Hour is brought to you by Mahler Foundation. So if you want to support our activities, please become a member. Just go to our website at mahlerfoundation.org for all of the details. It gives me special pleasure to take us all back to Beijing for the Beijing Music Festival. The Mahler Hour was there in 2020 as well, but only briefly. This time, we have much more to present to you as Mahler Foundation is an integral part of this major event. My first guest is Shuang Zou, Artistic Director of the Beijing Music Festival. Welcome back to the Mahler Hour.
Hello, Martin. Hello, everyone. So nice to see you.
Very nice to have you back, Shuang. And of course, this time it is quite a deep involvement that we have with what you're doing. This year, you've organized 25 performances, and we're a part of that. But before we start on the details, tell us a little bit about the Beijing Music Festival, its origins and its aims.
So the Beijing Music Festival, we are celebrating the 25th and the 26th edition this year. It's due to pandemic last year. We had a 1-year gap, but it's all for the better because we had 2 festivals in one this year. And obviously this has been started 26 years ago by Maestro Long Yu, and is one of his most celebrated enterprise in China in classical music. And it's the first classical music festival in China that has brought up a lot of artists and internationally renowned orchestras and music groups coming to China. And our festival has a very strong tradition in linking culture through music, especially to initiate new commission and celebrating the new talents of today. So very much so this year, after the 3 years of pandemic, we are so honored and extremely proud to co-present this Mahler Foundation Festival Orchestra residency in our festival, together with the support from you, Mahler Foundation. And we have been so proud to present this new orchestra founded by John Warner. And now he's sitting next to me in Beijing, and we just had a very successful week of the residency already and heading towards the final concert tomorrow.
Very good. We're going to talk in much more detail about these concerts. But what other concerts have been presented this year? So we'd have some sense of the scope of what you're doing.
Yes, we have a diverse range of concerts and music events this year, ranging from the classical repertoire to jazz classical concerts as well. And then we also have some multidisciplinary work representing music theater as well as opera. And we represented 3 chamber operas this year. One of them is from Britain, is the Bluebeard Picasso, led by, produced by Theatre of Sound together with London Sinfonietta. So that was also a UK-linked production, and that went down really well. And we also featured always major classical music scene in China. So we featured Guangzhou Symphony this year and also Shanghai Symphony as well as China Philharmonic. And one of the most important thing in our festival this year is we celebrate composers. So we have half a century generations of composers this year, all featured in one series of concerts. So we had the whole class, almost like half a class of Tan Dun's generation. So we had Chen Qigang's work, as well as Sola Liu and Tan Dun. And then we also have composers from all over the world, coming from the generations of the 70s, 80s, 90s, and the millennium, the years. The Sasha Scott is a young composer from UK. She's the youngest composer featured in our festival this year. So it's very exciting, very multicultural, but also cross-generational.
That's wonderful. I think I counted 25 performances over the course of 24 days, and you as artistic director, I'm sure you've been quite busy.
Yes, we're quite exhausted, but all for the excitement of celebrating music again, and also live with our audience and with the international friends. And we're so happy because it's the first time after all these years to wait till the new generation to come as well. And suddenly there's so much new work, so many new faces. And our audience has been, very surprised by this programming, because they were expecting some usual stuff. But this year we had so much of the new composition work, and it's been a very special experience for everyone.
Great. It's wonderful to hear that you're embracing that. And of course, that's one thing that Mahler Foundation is also very keen on. Tell me a little bit more about this, the Mahler Foundation Festival Orchestra, because I know you played a key role in it coming about. You were, I believe, visiting Martin Campbell-White, and John was there, and a few other people. Tell us a little bit about the motivation and how this happened. I think this was basically the result of a conversation, but also something that you were looking for.
Absolutely. I think the original idea, the original beginning was actually 4 years ago almost, that Martin brought me to this concert that John had in London. And I met Marina there as well, in a church in Kensington. And John was conducting Mahler 4, right? The rearrangement of Mahler 4 by him. And I was very, very surprised by these arrangements, and with such group of excellent young musicians on stage. And then Martin told me that was his orchestra, and he founded this orchestra called Orchestra for the Earth. And then I was wondering why the name, and all the Mahler effect and Mahler beyond, these concepts, came to my ear. And then I started to really wonder what that means, and then also inspired me to a great extent, because I was looking for a real new way of leading the festival, to get together international young musicians and up-and-coming musicians, as well as the celebrated composers coming together. So then I met John at Martin's house while cooking for them. So we were talking. So I set my alarm on my phone, and while talking, while the stew is on the stove, and I was talking about the program ideas. So we had so many ideas that John, especially with how to pair contemporary music with Mahler, how to set up a context for all these composers we want to work with to come in on this project, rather than just the work. We set them a theme that Mahler used, and then we realized we can't just do 1 or 2 concerts, but we have to do a residency. So right. I happily invited John to fund a new orchestra to come in and to celebrate Mahler, and together with all the new composers that want to celebrate Mahler with us, with their own work. So that's how it came.
I'll be speaking in detail with John in just a minute, but I want to bring in Martin Campbell-White for just a moment or two, because as a facilitator of all this, you also played an important role. Martin?
Yep, I'm here.
So tell us, this was a meeting in your home in France, and it was not by coincidence that you had the guests you had there. You've had a keen interest in connections, cultural connections, musical connections in particular, with China. What was your perspective in putting all this together?
Well, yes, thank you for that, Morten. I've been visiting the Beijing Music Festival since almost the beginning, and I became very friendly with its founder, Long Yu, and he has been incredibly influential throughout China since he conducts orchestras in Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Beijing at introducing Mahler's music. He's a passionate Mahler supporter. At the same time, he realizes that he needs to give way to the next generation, even though he's not very elderly. And he's shown tremendous faith in appointing Shuang Zou to the post of artistic director. And he's given her head. And she has a different perspective. She's not perhaps so well versed in all the major enormous Mahler symphonies, but she certainly realizes that Mahler is a key composer, Mahler beyond, leading us into the 21st century. And she had the idea, I think it was that why not have reduced versions of these works, and let's see how we can bring in the contemporary composers, not only from Europe, but also from China. And that's when 4 years ago, it's taken a long time due to the pandemic, but it's come to fruition now. And it's tremendous for the Mahler Foundation to be involved with that. It's our first sponsorship of a live orchestra. We're very proud of that. And of course, we shouldn't forget that the festival is showing the 10 documentaries of the Mahler films, which we funded, half funded, for the 2020, was it? Or
yes.
For the festival in Amsterdam that sadly was cancelled because of COVID. So, and I'm very proud it happened in this house, almost at this desk where I'm sitting talking to you guys. And it is certainly true that Shuang was cooking a wonderful meal for us, Chinese-style bœuf bourguignon, and at the same time as talking on the phone, rushing upstairs to talk to another young composer. It was very exciting and really warmed up a cold February evening in southwest France.
Well, it's a lovely, not only a story, but a reality that came of it. And it's very inspiring. And of course, to see it come to fruition must be very satisfying, Martin. Let's turn to John. I want to get John in here, who's the Mahler Foundation Festival Orchestra conductor for its residency in Beijing, and a fairly frequent guest on the Mahler Hour. Welcome, John.
Hello, nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
And of course, you're in Beijing now. You're getting ready for a concert tomorrow. We'll get to that in a moment. You're part of a project spanning continents, cultures, and languages in the name of Gustav Mahler. You probably feel right at home.
Yeah, in some ways, yeah. That's it.
Well, because I hear of your many adventures, I know that traveling is not something exactly foreign to you, and so taking your talents to China in this way. Tell me a little bit about who's playing in the orchestra. We've heard that it's the Mahler Festival Orchestra, but you're taking European artists to China for this project.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, as you say, I love traveling, and a lot of that's as a part of my work. And as a result of that, I've met a lot of musicians from across Europe in particular. And it struck me as a great opportunity to form this orchestra as quite a kind of pan-European orchestra. So we got people from Poland and Spain and Germany and Ukraine, as well as the UK. So it's a kind of multicultural orchestra from Europe that we brought all the way over here, which is very exciting and in some way quite Mahlerian for me, because he is someone who moved around a lot and traveled a lot, increasingly towards the end of his life,
and who had an identity from very many different places, didn't he? And in terms of his family, but also where he lived, as you say, but also that incredibly multi-ethnic background that he came from. Yeah. I want to get to exactly this idea that you have clearly pursued in putting this together. And it says in the festival book, Mahler started a musical revolution that resonated across the 20th century and beyond. So tell us a little bit about that revolution, because you're trying to carry not just his music, but certain ideas into the programming.
Yeah, so I guess I took as my inspiration the sort of principles of the foundation, which is that Mahler was this extraordinary visionary in terms of the new, of the contemporary, in terms of his emphasis on young people, his interest also in the idea of childhood, and his interest in nature and the environment, and particularly our relationship as human beings with that. And so those things are the seeds for this residency, and each one is the seed for a program. So there's a first program that we played based on the idea of childhood, another program based on the idea of birdsong, a third one delving more deeply into the kind of spiritual relationship we have with nature, and then a final program called Beginnings, which kind of looks to the future.
So we're looking right now at some of the posters for the programs. I'd like to actually go into them in somewhat more detail. These, as you say, these topics are huge, but they're also very closely identified with Mahler. One thing we must emphasize is that this is a chamber orchestra, correct? This is not a full sort of 100-piece orchestra we're talking about.
Yeah, 25.
Right. Very good. So this is, of course, the challenge as well, and bringing this music alive with 25 instrumentalists. I've heard it, and I've heard you do it. I know it can be done, and of course, that's a very intriguing topic as well that we've discussed on an earlier program. But let's go into some of the programming decisions here. Let's go back to the first concert. I don't know if we have that on the screen now. Childhood Memories. Here are the pieces. Tell us a little bit about this. Now, childhood, of course, was extremely important to Mahler. What pieces have you put together here?
So the second half of the program is Mahler 4, which has the famous last movement, which itself was the kind of generating movement for the whole symphony, which is based on a poem, which is a child's view of heaven, which is such a central topic for Mahler. So often in Mahler that the idea of happiness resides in the kind of residual memories of childhood, or even just the imagined memories of childhood. And it's a very potent topic, I think, and one that was very real for him, for sure, in that he had tragedies of his own in that respect. And I wanted to commission on that theme two particularly young composers, one from China and one from the UK, to kind of between them span the vast distance between our two countries, and to write a piece each from their own perspective that is inspired by this idea of childhood and what it is to be a child and to remember being a child. So we got Zhenyan Li, who wrote this wonderful piece for countertenor, which was important to me because the voice that sings the child's voice in the finale of Mahler 4 is a woman's voice, a soprano voice, as though it's an angel's voice, really, rather than a child on earth. And I sort of wanted to start with a boy's voice, essentially, as though that's the earthly voice of the child, and then we would finish the program with the heavenly voice. And then an instrumental work by Sasha Scott called Utopia Twists, where she wrote this fantastic piece that kind of explores the way a child sees the world, often in this very fresh and almost bizarre way. And that was our first half, followed by the symphony.
And we'll be speaking with Zhenyan Li after this, so we'll hear a little bit more about that whole process and inspiration behind it. The next program was one that many of us associate with Mahler, and that's nature, and in particular the birds. Birds come up a lot in Mahler. Tell us a little bit about that program.
So this one took the first symphony as its kind of foundation block, and that symphony grows out of the sounds of birdsong. Almost the very first thing you hear, the first sort of music you hear in the symphony is a kind of cuckoo call in the winds, and it's typically Mahlerian in that it's semi-real, but really it's to do with how we hear and we feel birdsong, and the whole symphony kind of revolves around that. So I thought it would be fun to pair it with a piece by Messiaen, which is aggressively literal in its treatment of birdsong. It's not particularly on the face of it interested in how we experience it. He just wanted to recreate it. Quite quite remarkable piece called Oiseaux Exotiques, Exotic Birds, which is a kind of semi-piano concerto for piano and a sort of expanded wind orchestra and percussion. It was a Chinese premiere of this piece, remarkably. And we had a fantastic pianist called Zhu Xiaofu, and we were joined for this by some Chinese musicians. So it was great. It was a kind of cultural collaboration to work on this piece. And then opening the concert, I commissioned another piece from a young composer, Chinese composer called Fei Queen Wang, to create her own imagining of on the idea of birdsong.
Sounds very, very interesting. And of course, we all wish we could hear this music and be there. Most of these concerts are over, but you have one more coming up. But before we get to that one, the third concert, which you had yesterday, was Songs of the Earth, music from China. By the way, I have to say that when we show these posters, they're really quite remarkable and successful, aren't they? They're really beautiful works of art themselves, aren't they?
Yeah, I was so thrilled when I saw these. There's something about seeing the sort of musical ideas that you've been working on suddenly put so beautifully in graphics. They're just fantastic. Yeah. So this third program, Songs of the Earth. I mean, I'm a firm believer that Mahler wrote more than one Song of the Earth, and I wanted this program to sort of trace a journey from one to the other. The first one being the Mitternachtslied, the Midnight Song from the Third Symphony, which sets a poem by Nietzsche. And to track the journey from that to the last song of the Song of the Earth, the Farewell, through music from China and also around the world. And of course, that poem that he set in the Song of the Earth is an ancient Tang Dynasty Chinese poem, which I saw as a kind of reflection of Nietzsche's own poem. So it's a kind of journey from west to east in that respect as well. So in the middle, I wanted to come out of midnight into a piece called Illumine by Anna Thorvaldsdottir, Icelandic composer, a piece all about light and the natural world. And then a remarkable contemporary piece called The Color Yellow by Chinese composer, an established Chinese composer called Huang Ruo, which is a concerto for the sheng, which is a Chinese mouth organ, 37 pipes, 3,000-year-old instrument. And we did this with Wu Wei, who is the greatest player of this instrument in its entire history. He is an extraordinary musician. And it was the Chinese premiere of this piece, a 15-year-old piece, and in my mind, a true Chinese contemporary classic. And it's the first time been played in China. And for me, what I found particularly interesting is that in Mahler's setting of Chinese poetry, he kind of conjured up the sounds of what he thought China might sound like in the kind of human spirit, that you suddenly get a mandolin and a celeste. And so to pair that with a piece composed for a very real Chinese instrument was quite exciting. And then the second half started with a piece by another great Chinese composer, contemporary composer called Shen Yiwen, called Night on the Watchtower, which is also based on a Tang Dynasty poem. And then we finished with the Abschied.
Very intricate connections, and of course making profound sense and acknowledging the incredible richness of Chinese poetry and music and contemporary artists as well. And so I can imagine you really having to delve quite deeply into this repertoire, into these traditions to make it work. For the last concert, which I think is just beautifully titled New Beginnings. So to end the festival with something that's beginning, I think is just a wonderful acknowledgement of what it's accomplishing and how it's turned to youth and reinvention. This is the big gala tomorrow night. And you're working with another group as well, Novus Classic Camerata from Shanghai. Tell us a little bit about that cooperation and what you'll be doing.
Well, it's really exciting. So I wanted to finish with something that looks to the future, which is something that Mahler did his whole life. And in particular, one of his great moves into the future was moving to America, to the New World, at the end of his life. And so it seemed appropriate to finish with the New World Symphony by Dvorak, which to me also conjures up a new world of the mind as much as anything else. And for that, of course, we need a full orchestra. And so the majority of this orchestra is actually musicians from China, young musicians with a fantastic young conductor as well. And we've been working together in rehearsals to put this piece together, which is just so exciting for us to have it kind of been exploring the musical culture of China on our own concerts, to then work with real Chinese musicians is really exciting. And the concert has a first half, starting with a piece by a Chinese composer called Wang Ying. It's called Big Bang, which is obviously an important part of a program called New Beginnings. And then two pieces, one by Mahler and one by Sir George Benjamin, both written when they were the same age, in their early 20s, and both kind of their first, their sort of first established works. George Benjamin's piece is called At First Light, and Mahler's the Songs of a Wayfarer. So that's that program.
And with that, the entire Beijing Music Festival ends, doesn't it? This will be the last. Is this the last concert, I think?
For this year, yeah.
Yeah. So you've been very busy. I know that you haven't really, I mean, you've been preparing your musicians long before coming, and you've been here for this over intense week, I imagine. As you can't quite relax yet, but as you will, no doubt, you will reflect on your time here. What have been your impressions, and what are your impressions from your time in Beijing?
It's amazing to play this music by Mahler, particularly that which was inspired by Chinese poetry, and to encounter an audience here that just loves it and appreciates it so deeply. It's very special and moving, because of course the Song of the Earth in particular is a piece that Mahler himself never even heard. And to think that he might have known that it would one day be played in the country that's poetry inspired it is something quite special. And I think it proves that this music is truly world music. It's music that transcends its original culture, in that it reached out to another culture, an ancient culture from the other side of the world, to create itself, and that it appeals to that culture as well. It's really special.
And of course, it's part of a unique opportunity, I think, to, as you say, to bring home that connectivity, and perhaps to remind those who are listening to the concerts in Beijing, this indebtedness to Chinese culture, certainly in Mahler, and him really making the decision to leave his cultural sphere to try to say what he was aiming for. And in a way, as well read as he was, he must have actually not felt that he could find that in the enormous German literature especially. So it really is a deep acknowledgement of a very different and rich perspective that was given to this genius towards the end of his life. So
he kind of maxed out on German literature by setting Goethe's Faust in the 8th Symphony, and so it seemed a natural step to just reach as far away as possible from that to this extraordinary poetry. And I must say, just finally, that I found this whole project a real testament to the foundations, and particularly Marina's vision of what her grandfather's music means for youth, for contemporary culture, and for our relationship with nature, that we've put it into practice in these 4 concerts, and it's borne such fruit. So it's tremendously exciting.
Well, it sounds it, and we're looking forward to more and hearing more and experiencing it ourselves. I think we'll need to talk a little bit more about that towards the end of the show. Just a reminder for everyone, if you are with us live, feel free to send us questions to the chat. We'll be happy to answer in a Q&A at the end of the hour. I want to turn now to Zhenyan Li, one of the composers whose work was featured on the program, entitled Childhood Memories. Welcome, Zhenyan.
Hello, Morten. Nice to meet you again. Hello, Shuang. Hello, John.
So first, what were your thoughts when you found out about working with Mahler Foundation Festival Orchestra, that you were being commissioned to write a piece for this very special concert?
Yeah, it's a really exciting experience for me, and thank you for it's such a great honor for me to work with Mahler Foundation Festival Orchestra and Thank you, Beijing Music Festival, for this great commission. I think each concert is really cool. It has individual theme. And thank you, John and Shuang, for choosing the incredible theme and the unique perspective of how we interpret Mahler's work. Yes. And it's actually, we had our first meeting back in March. And John and Shuang mentioned the program of the concert that my piece will be featured, which is the first one, the childhood. And of course, I know the Mahler Fourth very well. We kind of like learn it from very young age. And the orchestration first, which is really incredible master. And also last song is a very important repertoire we used to learn when we were young. I kind of grew up listening to it. Yes, and then I begin to try to collaborate with a poet, just choose the poet that who can also understand Mahler's work and to write the text for this song. Yes, and it's great that I can actually have the chance to bring my voice, new voices to audiences in China. And every player is very dedicated, and John's conducting is very clear, and I feel very trusted during the whole process. And it's being a Chinese composer, especially, it is really exciting for me to come back home and to bring new voices to the audiences in China. And I also went to most of the concerts that includes a new commission, like yesterday's and the day before yesterday. And it works so well. It creates such a diverse program, but it's also balanced with individual things. And
you said something about coming back to China. So just to inform our audiences, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you've been at the Royal Conservatory. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Oh, yeah. So I grew up in China and I began to study the piano since 4 and then begin to compose since 11. And then as I went to the middle school, which is affiliated to China Conservatory at age 11. So I had like very training about Western music theory and also Chinese music theory. And I also need to learn how to play Chinese flute. And I went to the UK from age 17 for undergrad at the Royal Academy for Music. And now I'm doing my 3rd year PhD at Academy. And my works are all kind of like influenced by the classical orchestral work. So that's why Mahler, the orchestration to me, is a very big influence. And I believe the power of the traditional orchestral writing and also lots of influence from Oriental theater. Yes.
And so let's talk a little bit about your piece. What is it called? And the title is, I don't know quite how to pronounce. It's an English word, but I don't know where to put the accent. What's the title?
Oh, the title is called Origins, and it is an old English word meaning pray. Yeah.
Where?
So it's actually the piece is it's beginning with the child vision, and it's largely an ecological story voiced through the persona of a child. And the piece kind of begins with is talking about the rich language of natural world, and particular the nouns of birds, for example, like song thrush, nightingale, whippoorwill. But as the story progresses, the child gradually loses his grasp on language, and this kind of like thinning out of his vocab, and it's coming out the sound in our own world, the natural sounds, the sound of bird song. Yes, and this piece has a very clear narrative line. And me and Emma, who is a librettist who composed the great librettist, we try to create something that is not just a song cycle or not opera, but is something in between these two musical forms. And we want audience to follow the storyline. And And we also want to give the ensemble, the instrumentalist, a space to connect the text in a deeper way. And especially in the word itself, it already has a quite strong rhythmic line when I receive the text. So it gives me lots of and we try to connect the ensemble with the vocal line in a deeper way. Yeah.
So the child it begins with a child's perspective, and that is again the title of the concert, and of course reflects Mahler's Fourth Symphony. But you say that it goes from being articulate and rich to losing its language and becoming less and less articulate. How does the piece end, and what might be the symbolism of that?
Oh, the last movement of this piece, it changed very much, and there's no text anymore. It's basically just a game of language, which is like syllables game, and we try to list words. And when there's Andy, who is the amazing singer and also actor, and we also try to let him to maybe at the beginning of the piece just bring more innocence of a child in the performance, but at the end it's quite desperate. So the vocal performance is quite I try to emphasize on the syllable writing instead of the meaning of the word. And also the ensemble, it suddenly turns kind of to a toneless vibe, and there's no actual rich chords as the beginning anymore. So the whole soundscape changed very much. And it actually, after the concert, the audience really gets the idea, which is something we aim to create, me and Emma. And yeah, it's just from the musical level, everything just goes suddenly changed. There's no pitch anymore. It's just mainly white noise, and try to collaborate with the vocal line.
In your description of the piece, you say that it moves towards the emptying out of nature's wildness and diversity. Is there an ecological subtext here to that, to the gesture you're talking about?
Can you repeat that question again, Morten?
You're talking about the emptying of nature in your notes to this piece. Is there a comment on nature and on our natural world in this piece as well?
Yes, it is. So the hint of in this piece is also the bird. And also in the third movement, for example, we try to introduce the new element, which is lots of nouns of chemical words. So the first movement is lots of nouns of beautiful birds, nightingale, songbirds. But the third movement is like a trancing phosphate and lead, bomb, bullet, like earthquake or yes, a natural disaster or artificial things that we made to make our earth bad, worse. Yeah, so this is kind of like the contrasting movements in the middle of the piece, and it's like because as a child, the difference that a child is, he can only express what he observed. He didn't really overthink that much, so it's kind of like it's very direct. And the words we use is very rhythmical, and so the music can work with it, and help the interpretation of the storyline. I think
Mahler spoke too about the child's voice not being simple but being profound because of its directness and its immediacy.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being part of this, for being our guest, and for being a part of this wonderful project. In closing, I'd like to quickly turn back to Martin Campbell-White. Martin, I wanted to ask you a little bit about this. Just is so exciting what we've just heard about what's been conceived, what's been created in the name of the Beijing Music Festival, but also in collaboration with the Foundation Orchestra, and of course John's curating and conducting of all of this. Martin, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, there we go. So after being a part of creating the Mahler Foundation Festival Orchestra and seeing its success and what we've heard about the fascinating details in this past hour, are there plans for the project continuing? How do we look into the future with this wonderful project?
Well, of course, we can always hope to persuade Beijing Music Festival to engage the Mahler Foundation Festival Orchestra again in a future festival. But that's up to Shuang, not up to me. I very much hope that we can take something to Europe in 2025. Take the group that, incidentally, I should add, includes some Chinese musicians. And of course, the final concert in Beijing is an amalgamation with the Novus Classicus Camerata. And John, that's not John conducting the New World Symphony. That's the wonderful founder, Jin, of the orchestra there. Mm-hmm. So if we're going to try to bring the group to Europe or indeed to the North America, I have some irons in the fire, but had to wait until this festival had been accomplished and finished before moving on to see if we can persuade another imaginative festival director to include these amazing programs and even commission some more music. But I think the principle has to be that we need to have an amalgamation of European and Chinese musicians in it. I really feel very strongly. Mahler Foundation is deeply committed to the Mahlerian development, not only his own music, but contemporary music and new creations, which of course Mahler was deeply committed to. So all of that makes me feel that we must continue with this project.
That's wonderful news. And of course, because we're all a bit jealous, most of us not being in China right now and hearing what's happening, it would be wonderful to share in that richness at other locations and at other times. And of course, as you say, bringing Mahler to the fore in that way, and as John also pointed out with nature, his question of identity and new music, all of that really embraced not only by Mahler, but what Mahler Foundation is trying to achieve. What are the long-term effects? I mean, what are the aspirations? This gets to the heart of our mission to some extent too. But if we were to take it not only to Europe but to North America, South America, and other parts of the world, what would those concerts look like? I'm assuming it would also involve local cultures and talents and new works from those locations.
Yeah, I haven't thought of that. If we take the Mahler Foundation Festival Orchestra to South America, for instance, what is the raison d'etre for having Chinese musicians there? Perhaps we should have some South American musicians. This is work in progress. It's, of course, touring orchestras isn't cheap. And ecologically, we're trying to cut down on air travel. It's amazing a number of European orchestras that are taking trains from one engagement to another, cutting out on the polluting air travel. But I think hopefully we can get something going in Europe, and it's always dangerous to be trying to push things on too many fronts. So I'm going to concentrate first and foremost in Europe, and then I hope somebody else can take over the torch.
Very good, Martin. We're all indebted to you for helping facilitate this, and I know from being a member of the Mahler Foundation as well how important it is to have individuals take the lead in these matters. So it's really quite exciting to hear about it. I think as many of us are feeling, it's been nice to also to experience it, and perhaps we'll even have access to some of these recordings and performances in future. So
I certainly hope so. Yeah.
Yes, as I do too. Well, thank you, Martin, and thank you for everyone. I want to give our audience worldwide a chance to ask questions as well. And we've heard now from a number of key individuals. You're welcome to ask questions of any of them. And I have, let's see, I have one question already here for me. I will read this, and it looks like it could be answered by any number of you. Let's see. What have each of the participating, this is from Anthony Raumann in the UK, what have each of the participating European and Chinese musicians learned from each other's musical traditions as expressed through Mahler's works and outlook? I don't know who might want to take that, maybe John or Shuang or Shanyin?
I'll try. I can only speak for what we've learned from them, but a lot is the answer. I could focus on one piece, which is perhaps the Shang Concerto that I mentioned earlier by Shuang Zou, and I mean the working with both Wu Wei, the Shang player, and Shuang Zou, the composer, just opened up. You know, this piece it's an extraordinary piece that we'd rehearsed on our own in London without the soloist and without the composer. And there was quite a large degree of head scratching. And we arrived here, and then with the two of them in the room, suddenly it comes to life, and it you know, it turns into this remarkable piece of music. I mean, I've never been a part of or witnessed a performance before where the audience started applauding in the middle of the cadenza in the concerto. You know, if that gives you an idea of the kind of temperature in the room at that point, it was absolutely extraordinary. And yeah, I mean, this piece has influences from Chinese theatre as well as all the way around the world, because Shuang Zou lives in New York, despite having trained to some part and grown up in China. So yeah, I mean, there's just so much to be learned about how this part of the world has taken on kind of Western European classical music and made it its own. It's extraordinary.
Well, I think to that, you're speaking to the performance tradition to some extent, with using a Chinese instrument, an instrument unique to Chinese culture, but also to, as you said, it's one thing to have the score in front of you; it's another to feel what musicianship is required, and how these things are finessed in ways that can only be experienced one-on-one in the same room. And of course, that's part of the hope of bringing these musicians and cultures together, is that when you are in the same room, you enrich one another. And for you, of course, that's when it starts making the most profound sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, and of course, perhaps I hope it's not glib to say that one of the things you also learn is that we are the same, and that, you know, you play a piece like Mahler together, or Jacques or Messiaen, and you have you know, similar reactions and similar feelings, and you kind of gel together over it in the same way, because we're humans. And despite the fact this music was written by people from different cultures at different times in history, we still respond to it and recreate it in a way that links us together.
And it will maybe influence your approach even to what we think was music we knew, because they will bring a different approach to that as well in their assessment and their interpretation and their new creations from that. And it makes me wonder, Shanyan, do you have, from your perspective as a composer, I imagine you might also be able to comment on what this type of interaction has meant to you. You've also come to the UK to study, and of course you're being inspired in part by Mahler, but on the other hand, of course, you're bringing in many of these Chinese texts and traditions, and you said also theater. Are you with us, Jenya? There you are.
Yes. Yes, I think, yes, to me, it's always, for example, the idea of how to bring a narrative line within composing a new work is quite something that I think I work closely with my own music background, because I grew up with listening to traditional Chinese opera, and it's kind of like function quite different as Western theater work. I mean, the theater work, especially the way of metaphor, for example, the use of metaphor like in traditional Chinese theater, and the importance of the text is also it play a different role than traditional Western theater. So I kind of like always want to introduce like a lot more perspectives of how to guide the audiences to understand what as a composers can tell in the music. Yeah, and kind of like offer them a new perspective of things, or is something I always to think about, and also being like is also something I think is important. And during the rehearsals, yeah, and we work a lot. For example, like there's a double bass solo in my piece, and we work a lot with the player herself, and to kind of like a guide how to play, what's the mood, and how to work with the vocal line, which is kind of. Yeah.
I have a question here. This is probably for Shuang. This is from Bert van der Waal van Dijk. Is Gustav Mahler a well-known name for the classical music audience in China?
Yes, surely, of course, have to be, absolutely. And it's been, it's a trend now, almost for the big orchestras in China to try, especially Mahler 8, and then also Mahler 4, Mahler 5. So it's a tip of the box in some ways at the moment. And for the audience, it is very exciting to see in this particular concert series, some people came with the score, and then they came for the purpose of learning about the arrangements, the reduced version, and then they're trying to look for the clue, and it's almost like walking in a gold mine, trying to find the jewel, in the beauty of the rearrangements. So they put a lot of comments online, and some appreciated Mahler 1 and some appreciated Mahler 4, and they wrote the reasons, and then they discover which instruments replaced which ones. And it was tremendously pleasurable for me to see so much attention drawn to this kind of concerts. So that also reflects how much audience grew through, the culture of Mahler and his, and although we're talking about Chinese composers, Western composers, but I think in this particularly residency, everyone is just composers celebrating Mahler, coming from different background. So, this particular Sheng concerto has an instrument from China, but then all these other compositions by Chinese composers, they're merely contemporary work as well as being with a Chinese identity of the composer carrying through their own birth country. But I think it's very much mixed and multicultural, this residency. That's what's so wonderful about it.
Well, in a sense, it's, we see Mahler 100 years ago taking a text from China and creating his own version of that in his culture, and the bringing together of these inspirations continuing, right? I mean, in a sense, that's what we're doing. That is a process that keeps moving forward in very similar ways, in some strange way too.
Yeah, I wanted to share this one last thing. Like yesterday when we did the talk, and one of our composers said, basically in 1991, that was when Das Lied van der Erde was first heard in China, had its premiere, and our prime minister then started to ask who wrote the poems. And most people didn't know, and they were trying to dig out who wrote the poems. And then the prime minister said, you have to find out. So all the intellectuals in the literary world start to dig out this translation of a translation of a translation, and found out. So that's just like fascinating to hear. Yeah, it's a full circle, and it's the wheel of life in some ways.
Yeah.
It's
beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. I have before we close for today, we're getting close to the end of time here. I have to give you all a few announcements. My first one is there's another Mahler festival happening this fall that we want to be certain to mention. The Festival Gustav Mahler in Milan, Italy, is being presented from the 22nd of October to the 13th of November, featuring all of Mahler's symphonic works performed by the leading Italian symphony orchestras. The program also includes the song cycles and Mahler's reworkings of the symphonies by Robert Schumann. If you are a member of the Mahler Foundation, you receive a 40% discount on almost all of the tickets for the festival, which is quite amazing. As part of the festival, Marina Mahler and I will be presenting the 10 mini documentaries co-commissioned by Mahler Foundation and the Concertgebouw for the Amsterdam Mahler Festival that had to be canceled in 2020. These screenings are taking place at the Austrian Cultural Forum in Milan on October 23 and 24. And speaking of the Amsterdam Mahler Festival, we have a very special guest joining us for the next announcement, which was pre-recorded a number of days ago. For this announcement section, we have a very special guest joining us, Simon Reining, Manager Director of the Royal Concertgebouw Hall in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, host of an upcoming Mahler Festival. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you, Morten.
It's not just any Mahler Festival, as we all know, it's the great Amsterdam Festival at the Concertgebouw. Of course, we were all looking forward to 2020. It was a shame, wasn't it? This had to be canceled.
Yes, of course, it was a pity, but there was no choice as the whole world was suffering from all the aspects relating to the pandemic. So it was a no-brainer, but very, very unfortunate. But very fortunate that we look forward to a new festival, little different from the festival that we organized or we wanted to organize in 2020. So 5 years later, in May 25, we'll organize a wonderful Mahler Festival here in Amsterdam.
So you're literally back. And so tell us what's being performed and who's performing?
All the Mahler symphonies, of course, and all his lieder will be performed in the main hall, the symphonies and the lieder mainly in the recital hall. And we have a wonderful selection of orchestras, and a little different, I must say, compared to the 2020 selection, because when we were organizing the 2020 festival, it was so clear to us that Mahler is such a wildly admired composer worldwide. So we came up with the idea that we should also invite the best or one of the best orchestras from Asia. So we have asked the NHK Symphony Orchestra from Tokyo also to take part in the festival. And also, again, a US orchestra. And now we have asked the CSO, the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, to come. And of course, we have the Concertgebouw Orchestra, we have the Budapest Festival Orchestra, and the Berliner Philharmoniker. So it's a great bunch of orchestras, as I must say.
Oh, wonderful. It sounds exciting as always. And who are some of the singers?
Well, not all the singers are known already, but we do have some young talents, and they have been selected by Julius Drake. And we have singers such as James Newby, and also we have Stuart Jackson, Lawrence Kilsby, Raoul Stefani, who is a Dutch singer, Axel Fagnot and Fleur Barron. It's a great lineup, I think, of young top-notch singers.
And any other elements in the programming we might want to know about?
Well, we're still working on it, but one of the things, of course, we want to do is to show the wonderful series of documentaries that we have made together with the Mahler Foundation, in which Marina Mahler is featuring. But also we want to make the festival as accessible as possible. And we're working now on a program that we can live stream all the concerts on the square in front of the Concertgebouw on the Museum Square. And we're working on it, how to make it possible. And of course, it's quite expensive, but we want to make it work. So I cannot announce it yet if it will be done, but we hope that we can make it work.
And new music. The Mahler Foundation, along with Concertgebouw Orchestra and some other organizations, are commissioning a new work by Anders Hilborg. Is this also taking place in the context of the festival?
Absolutely. It will be performed during the first concert, the opening concert, alongside the First Symphony of Mahler, and that will be performed by the Concertgebouw Orchestra and will be conducted by the upcoming music director Klaus Mechelen.
Well, it's always exciting to know about a Mahler festival coming in at the Concertgebouw in Amsterdam. Now, this is an announcement. So what you're saying is it's time to order your tickets. Is that right?
Well, we will. The sales will start in mid-November. So I can advise every member of the Mahler Foundation to be able to take care that you are in time to ask to buy these passepartouts. So be aware.
Well, this is going out to the Mahler world. And as you indicated at the beginning, the Mahler world is enormous and it stretches really around the globe. And I think we will be seeing many fellow Mahlerites in 2025. We are all looking forward to this. Wonderful to have you on the show, Simon.
Thank you very much. I look forward to having you here in Amsterdam together with all the Mahler fans.
Thank you. Bye-bye. The Mahler Hour, brought to you by Mahler Foundation and contributors around the world, is a monthly streaming event bringing together individuals interested in the composer, the thinker, the humanist Gustav Mahler, as we explore not only his life and works, but also how his legacy still informs essential aspects of the human experience and how we can turn that experience into a force for the good in today's world. Become a member and support our activities. I want to thank our guests, Shuang Zou, Martin Campbell-White, John Warner, Zhenyan Li, and Simon Reinig for joining us today, as well as our production team, Marco Ayala, and with some help from Francisco Brizio, who couldn't be with us today, unfortunately, and Monica Angiano, our Executive Director for Administration. The Mahler Hour is back in November. Stay tuned for an upcoming announcement regarding time and topic. I hope you can join us. That's our program for today. Stay safe. Thanks for watching. Okay. Are we off the air, Marco?
Hope so.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
Good timing, Morten. 2 minutes past 5.